The car market is currently in an extremely weird, volatile, and frankly unprecedented state of limbo. Sort of the calm before the storm, you could say. So let's talk about it. First, and I just want to talk about this briefly, and that's Trump tariffs. Last week, tariffs on a variety of goods, including cars, went into effect. But in the ninth hour, automakers specifically were granted a 30-day pause on these tariffs. A pause that truthfully doesn't really change much, unless it could potentially lead to tariffs being canceled altogether, but at least as of recording this video, it doesn't really look like that's going to be the case. But what it does do is add a level of uncertainty and volatility, and it sort of extends the process of ripping the band-aid off for these tariffs and automakers and the impact on prices that this will have. And it's definitely giving the car market a bit of the calm before the storm vibes. Not to mention the time of year that it is. January and February is a weird transitionary period of the year. People just spent a bunch of money during the holidays, and it's not a particularly sales-heavy period of time. Tax season is ramping up, but refunds really haven't hit yet. We're just sort of in a state of limbo, and the car market and car prices are certainly in a transitionary period, and whenever you look at the data, it makes this loud and clear. Wholesale used vehicle prices were lower in February compared to January, but they were up slightly year over year. But the silver lining here is that increase was only 0.1% year over year, so it's basically flat. And currently, the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index is at 204.1. MMR retention, which is a metric that gauges how far off from MMR value cars are selling for. An MMR retention of 100% means that cars are selling for their true MMR value. Above 100% means they're selling for above, and below means they're selling for a discount. And last month, MMR retention was at 99%, which means that cars were selling for a slight discount. What this tells us is that buyers weren't really getting discounts on cars that they bought at wholesale, but it also shows that sellers weren't really moving from their asking price either. The average daily sales conversion rate was at 60.4%. This was an increase of 2.1%, and it is higher than what we typically see this time of year. For context, over the last 3 years, the daily sales conversion rate was 57.3%. But let's take a look at individual vehicle segments. As we mentioned earlier, the overall car market saw an increase of 0.1% year over year, and if we look at overall vehicle segments, you can see that it is a bit of a mixed bag, with EVs still being by far the biggest loser with a decline of 6.2%, which, believe it or not, is still far better than what we saw a couple of years ago, but definitely isn't good compared to gas cars. And on the flip side, non-EVs saw a decline of 0.5%. But outside of electric vehicles versus gas vehicles, there were some very clear winners and losers when it comes to appreciation or depreciation. Compact cars saw the biggest decline of 4.8%, followed by mid-size cars, which declined by 3.5%. Pickup trucks were quite a ways ahead of mid-size cars with a decline of 0.6%. And here's where we take a turn for the positive, with SUVs and crossovers increasing by 0.2% and the luxury cars increasing by 1.2%. I got to admit, these are larger than expected decreases across crossovers and mid-size cars, but increases that I think were to be expected across segments like luxury cars and pickup trucks. But let's take a look at CarGurus Used Vehicle Value Index, and let's see where prices are trending, not only across vehicle segments, but also vehicle makes and models. Now, looking at this graph from CarGurus, you can see that the date range that I've selected is the last year, from March 8th, 2024 to March 9th, 2025. And you can see that while this graph does look a bit volatile, there are some ups and downs. Whenever you look at the data and the actual price change across this year, it looks a lot more stabilized than I think this graph really shows. You can see that this time last year, CarGurus Used Vehicle Value Index, the average used car price was $27,765. Today, it is $26,969, so a price difference of about $800. You can see that the index itself has gone up in the last 30 days. Again, something that is reflected right here in the graph, but has gone down in the last 90 days as well as year over year. Looking at individual vehicle segments, you can see that in the last 30 days, all vehicle segments have gone up in price with the exception of coupes and convertibles, and all car segments have gone down in the last 90 days and year over year, with the largest price declines coming from segments like convertibles, coupes, vans, wagons. If we scroll down to makes, you can see that it is again a bit of a mixed bag, which is something that we saw with Manheim with the data that I discussed earlier. This is actually probably the biggest mixed bag that we've seen within CarGurus in a pretty long time. There is a good mix of cars that have declined and increased in value in the last 30 days, while most makes and models have decreased in value in the last 90 and year over year, but it is still a bit of a mix nonetheless. The largest increases come from brands like Cadillac, weirdly enough Chrysler, Lincoln, and Mazda. which is quite strange because all of these automakers, with the exception of Mazda, are automakers that have extremely high inventory, so I'm a bit surprised to see that they've been appreciating in the last 30 days. While brands with the largest price declines are brands like Polestar, which has been a dud for a long time now, Ineos, which is a brand new brand, Genesis, which has declined by 2.15%, and most of the other ones here have declined by less than a percentage point. But one thing that I always like to acknowledge whenever I do these types of videos is that at the end of the day, a car is only worth what somebody is willing to pay for it, and car sellers can list their cars all day long for various prices on platforms like Cars.com, AutoTrader, Facebook Marketplace, but if somebody isn't willing to buy it at that price, is it really worth it? Well, I say no. Which is why I want to take a look at Cars.com, because I think Cars.com is a really great tool to look at because they allow you to see the markdowns that are associated with vehicle listings and how long vehicles have been listed on the platform for. And in my experience, some of the best discounts can come from cars that have already been marked down and have been sitting on dealership lots for a number of weeks. So in order to take a look at a variety of used cars, I've selected my filters to be used, minimum year of 2021, so to reflect newer used cars, with the max price of 40 grand and mileage at 60,000 miles or less. And you can see that right off the bat, there are a number of cars that are considered to be great deals, but let's take a look at these actual listings and see what the data really says. We have something like this 2023 Nissan Rogue, which has 7,500 miles on it, and you can see that this car is listed for $30,500, and it's advertised as having a recent price drop of $2,225. You can see that this is just kind of your classic Nissan SUV. It's in solid condition, it's relatively new, it's what you would expect out of a used car. And if we scroll down, you can see that this car has been listed for 12 days and it has seen total price reductions of $2,225, which is exactly what's advertised here. Which is interesting because if you've seen my videos like this before, you know that sometimes the advertised price drop is very misleading and dealerships will actually increase their price right before lowering it. That way the car is advertised as having a price drop, and in this case, that is not the reality. It actually has had a recent price drop. We have a 2024 Kia Carnival LX. This car has just over 29,000 miles and it's listed for $33,992. And it's advertised as having a price drop of $229. And if you scroll down here, you can see that it's actually had more price drops than just that. It's been listed for 23 days and it's actually seen a total amount of price drops totaling to $1,496, with the first price drop taking place on the last day of February and another one taking place just yesterday. We have this 2021 Honda Accord Sport, and this car has just over 47,000 miles, and this car is listed for $23,549. Now, as we know, Honda is an automaker that has had historically low inventory over the last few years. In fact, generally speaking, Honda has lower inventory compared to automakers even pre-pandemic. And you can see that this car is very nice. Leather, it looks as though it's relatively fully loaded. It's a nice car. And this car has been listed for 18 days, but it's only seen price reductions of $436. You can definitely get better than that. A $436 price reduction in this current car market is certainly nothing to write home about. And in my videos a lot, one thing that I talk about is the difference in price reductions for cars that have low inventory versus high inventory and what that looks like if you are a car buyer. And in theory, the idea should be that if you're looking for a car that has high inventory, you should be able to find discounts for that car easily, while if you buy a car with low inventory, it will be harder to find those discounts. And while I do think that this is generally true, I also think that there are a lot of great discounts that you can find if you just really, really search for them. And I think I have the perfect two examples here. First, we have this 2021 Lincoln Corsair Reserve. This car has 18,426 miles and it's listed for just under 30 grand. This is actually being sold in the Dallas area at a local Volkswagen dealership, and you can see that the car is pretty nice. But Lincoln is an automaker that has extremely high inventory, and thus these cars are being discounted left and right. But you can see that this car has been listed for 67 days and it's only seen $3,010 in total price reductions. But it really isn't that great considering this car has been listed since January 1st. It's been seeing slow price reductions with an initial price increase. And generally speaking, Lincolns just aren't really in that much demand. So I do think that this car should probably be discounted more considering how long it's been taking it to sell. On the flip side, you have something like this 2022 Lexus, which has 30,832 miles and it's listed for $36,800. You can see here that this car is a very nice car and it comes from an automaker with some of the lowest inventory in the entire car market. But you can also see that this car has been sitting for 58 days and it's seen a total price reductions of $5,947. Now, I think what this shows us is a couple of things. First is the fact that there are price reductions across the board, across a wide variety of makes, models, years, mileage, and price points. But what I also think that this shows us, and something that I've talked about in videos in the past, is price reductions only show us just part of the picture. If you guys remember back in 2022 and 2023, whenever the car market was crashing after it exploded in 2021, we were seeing price reductions left and right of $5, $10, sometimes $15,000. And to me, this wasn't really indicative of cars literally losing their value. It was instead indicative of car dealerships pricing their cars too high and then having to course correct and lower their prices as a result. And I think that we are seeing this with some lower inventory automakers like Lexus, for example. Dealerships, whether new or used, are selling these cars that have low inventory like Lexus, Honda, Toyota for too high of a price, and then they have to lower that price in order to get it to sell. Because in the case of this Lexus, this car was listed back on January 10th, 2025 for $42,000. And even after nearly $6,000 in price reduction, this car is still only considered to be a fair deal, which tells me that this dealership priced this car far too high right out of the gate. And so I think that this is a good cautionary tale to show us, while price reductions are a great indicator to show us how desperate a car dealer is to get a car off their lot, it really isn't indicative of whether or not a car is actually a good deal, because a $5,000 price reduction on a car that was already far too expensive isn't necessarily good compared to something like a lower price reduction on a car that was already priced below market value. So you want to look at this from the full picture, not just from the price reduction standpoint. Now, the conclusion here to me is that the car market is currently in a bit of a Mexican standoff with outside factors.
I didn't do it! Okay. Everybody just calm down.
Count of three, we're all gonna put down our guns.
I have crossbows.
Like tariffs, tax seasons, time of the year. And you're seeing this on the wholesale level. You're seeing this on the level of third-party platforms like Cars.com and AutoTrader and Car Gurus. But the good news here is a few different things. Number one is tax refund season is basically here, sort of giving the car market the jolt that it needs. Tariffs, well, I have nothing good to report here. But the third fact, and one that is good news, is the fact that we are quickly approaching the end of month, end of quarter, and so I do expect that there will be better car prices in the next few weeks. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.